As Donald Trump becomes more and more deranged, so of course do his Trump stooges. Because when in a rally, town hall, or interview, Donald Trump says something completely indefensible, it is his job, it is the job of MAGA Republicans and Trump stooges to come to the defense of the indefensible, and their responses, their explanations, their defense is always so disingenuous and deranged, much like Donald Trump. But thankfully, we are seeing some journalists, some members of the media, and one specifically, start to take a new approach to the lies of the Trump stooges. And that's just kicking them off air. And we have seen that a couple of times, and we saw it today from CNN's Jim Acosta, who we are a big fan of on this show because he does not put up with the BS of the Trump stooges. And we saw that today when he kicked off one of Donald Trump's own personal liars because she just wouldn't answer his questions. She just wouldn't do anything but lie, and we are going to get into that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video and to hit that subscribe button if you want to join the community that we're building on this channel. It really means a lot to me and goes a long way in supporting what we are building here. Now, before we get into the interview with Jim Acosta and that Trump stooge, we need a little bit of context on what she was defending, and we're going to get it in this clip right here.
I want to take a look at what you said and just tell me, let's watch it.
If we have to.
Yeah.
We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. But the thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Schiff. I call him the enemy from within.
Mr. President, Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged and unchecked power is in our future. What do you say about that?
I thought it was a nice presentation. I wasn't unhinged. You know what they are? They're a party of sound bites. Somebody asked me, can they be brought together? You know, I never thought, really, I wasn't thinking like they could, because they're very, very different. And it is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax.
This line that Donald Trump continues to use, going after the enemies from within, is not a one-off. It's not something he just threw out there as he crazily ranted. No, it is written into the text of his speeches. He didn't just say it with Maria Bartiromo. We see him say it rally after rally again and again because he believes it. And at the same time, as Donald Trump is talking about going after his enemies, he's talking about giving immunity to police officers and rallying the military behind him. The same military he tried to send after peaceful protesters, telling them to shoot protesters in the legs. This is who Donald Trump is. And this is the violent rhetoric he continues to push. And of course, it is being defended, this indefensible rhetoric, by his Trump stooges. But like I said, Jim Acosta wasn't putting up with it, and I want to check out that clip right here.
You know, people toss around the term enemy, as Donald Trump has, but this talk of using the military, using the National Guard to go after political opponents. Your response to that, are you comfortable with that?
I want to go back to something real quick Maria was saying earlier. She was trying to tie the unfortunate attack on Paul Pelosi somehow to President Trump's rhetoric, which is quite a stretch. Someone who was having a mental health crisis is somehow attached to President Trump's rhetoric. But at the same time, my Democratic colleagues do not want President Biden and, more importantly, Vice President Harris to be in any way held accountable for the deaths that have happened on their watch because of their failed leadership. We have 13 service members who should be alive today, but they tragically died in Afghanistan.
Yeah, Katie,
because of
all
Vice
right.
President
But
Harris's
that's not.
No,
okay. But can you just
Jim,
respond to my question,
for
though?
a moment.
Well, no, I can't, because you're not even answering my question. My question was about using the military or the National Guard against political opponents. Shouldn't that be a red line that we don't cross as a country?
I do not believe we're going to be seeing that happen. We've already seen a lot of red lines that we never thought would be crossed before in our country happening under the Biden-Harris administration. I didn't think we would see the Department of Justice so weaponized as we have seen to go after Republicans, people who have just wanted to have basic ask questions.
What do you mean by that?
I'm saying here in Georgia, my home state, what is happening in Fulton County, in my home state here of Georgia, with these people who are being under investigation because they simply held a meeting and when to ask questions about the election, they are now under indictment. President Trump is being targeted by the Department of Justice
The allegations
in
go
ways
further
that
than
no
that.
one else would have been if it
All right.
wasn't for the fact, Jim, respectfully, if it wasn't for the fact that he was running for president. You and I both know a lot of these things wouldn't be happening. Jack Smith's trying to get all kinds of special exceptions so he can go after President
These investigations
Trump
started before we got into the campaign season, and he did try to strong arm the Secretary of State of Georgia to overturn the election results. I don't have time, Marie, to get back to you, but I mean, we do have to stick to the facts.
That is a perfect response to the lying. Say that they're not answering your question, point out their lying, point out their disingenuous rhetoric, and cut it off early. End the segment, boot them off the air. We do not need to hear any more from the Trump stooges who are doing anything they possibly can to defend his lies. And Tim Miller of The Bulwark gave a really great point on this lately, that it's not even just the cowardly Republican running away from the question. That would be one thing. It's one thing when you see Republicans in Congress try to dodge the crazy claims that Donald Trump makes. Of course, they're still cowards and spineless for doing so. But when they go on air to defend his lies and pretend he is not meaning what he is saying, which he always is, and double down on it today, that is when they are especially spineless, cowardly, and just disgraceful. And we saw that from Governor Glenn Youngkin, and it was perfectly called out by Jake Tapper. I think we should take a look.
I don't think that he's referring to elected people in America. But I'm literally reading his quotes. I'm literally reading his quotes to you, and I played them earlier so you could hear that they were not made up by me. He's literally talking about, quote, radical left lunatics. And then one of those lunatics he mentioned was Congressman Adam Schiff. Criminals should be locked up. Migrants who are in this country illegally, who are violent, should be locked up and deported. I grant you all of that, and I am not denying that it's happening at all. But I'm talking about Donald Trump saying that he wants to use the National Guard and the military to go after the left. That's what he's saying.
This is what Republicans try to do. Donald Trump says something insane, as he always does, and they say, no. You're not understanding the context, even though the context is exactly what he said. And then they say, no, but you're misunderstanding him. And then Donald Trump comes out the next day and says, no, that's exactly what I meant. I want to attack Adam Schiff. That's absolutely what I meant by that statement. They can't defend him. It is indefensible. And this anger and grievance continues to come out as he gets more and more deranged. And it's what Kamala Harris has been talking about how cognitively Donald Trump is in decline and completely unfit to do the job of president. And it's what she had to say right here.
Great. Just questions about his mental fitness for office at this point. Do you think Donald Trump needs to take a cognitive test?
Well, I'm going to say what I've said publicly and will say many times based on my observations, and I think the observations of many. Donald Trump is increasingly unstable, and as has been said by the people who have worked closely with him, even when he was president.
Kamala Harris doesn't even need to be campaigning against Donald Trump on this issue. He's doing it for himself. He is making the media, well, it's really Kamala Harris because the media wouldn't do it otherwise, but this is becoming a talking point now. It's becoming a point of conversation. How deranged Donald Trump is, how much he is in cognitive decline. And thank goodness it was their fascination to do it with President Biden. It was the only thing they'd ever talk about. If President Biden bopped around to tunes on stage for 40 minutes at the end of a town hall that was only 3 questions, it would have been the biggest story ever. It would have been nonstop conversation. And so that's why we need to continue to call out the things that Trump says. And someone who did a great job doing that was our next vice president, Tim Walz.
Now, I want you to think about it. In other words, Americans who don't support him. Just to be clear, if any of your neighbors or friends or anybody thinks about that, you know who he's talking about? He's talking about you. He's talking about you. He's talking about someone who comes to a rally to express their love and their commitment to our democracy. Donald Trump sees that as an enemy, all right? So I have to tell you, as someone who wore this nation's uniform proudly, as someone who now is the commander-in-chief of the Minnesota National Guard, the idea of sending U.S. military personnel against American citizens makes me sick to my stomach. I'll tell you what, we'll let the lawyers decide if what he said was treason, but what I know is it's a call for violence, plain and simple. And it's pretty damn un-American, if you ask me.
Do not let him run away from this. It should scare us that Donald Trump is calling on the enemy from within to be attacked. He has always talked about going after his political opponents, but he is more aggrieved and angrier than ever. And with the Supreme Court saying that he can be a dictator, we should all be afraid. We should all be really scared of what this guy wants to do. But we have talked about bad news, maybe a little bit too much in this video. Maybe not bad news, but scary news. So I want to finish with a bit of positive news, and we can see that right.
Oldest living president has cast his vote. Former President Jimmy Carter voted early and by mail today in his native Georgia. A spokesman says 15 days after celebrating his 100th birthday. His grandson shared earlier this year that Carter was, quote, only trying to make it to vote for Kamala Harris. I don't know. At this point,
President Jimmy Carter officially has cast his ballot for Kamala Harris. Early voting began in Georgia yesterday. Early voting is soon beginning in states across the country. Make sure you have your plan to vote. I texted my brother yesterday who lives in Georgia. I said, early voting started already. He certainly knows that because I'm always bugging him about it. Make your plan to vote. And hey, you as well, listen to me. Make sure you vote. We got to make sure we vote. We're turning out. It can be before November 5th. It can be on November 5th. Just got to get out and vote for Kamala Harris. And we're going to be talking about that every single day on this show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue bar in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.